Okay, today we're going to pick up with our second lecture on personal finance. We're going to be looking at budgeting and financial planning. We'll get this probably a two-part lecture where we'll talk about the budgeting today. But let's get going into it. All right, budget. Well, what is a budget? It's simple enough. It is simply a plan on how to raise and spend your money. You figure out how much money you're going to be able to make at the jobs that you are at. I will say that most people in America today are working more than one job. You are very, very fortunate if you are only going to work one single job. Most people have at least a side hustle. What is a side hustle? Side hustle is local terminology for a job in which you do on a part-time basis, in which is an extra source of income, whether that be mowing yards on the weekend or picking up a part-time job at Walmart or selling products to friends and neighbors in order to make a little extra money that is not normally budgeted. Um, so when it comes to raising money, you figure out how much money you're going to be able to make from the job and your multiple streams of income, and then you decide a plan on which way you're going to spend that money in order to maximize your ability to use that money, and of course to minimize waste. That's the big thing here, is not only figuring out how much you have, how much you can spend, but ways in which you can cut or trim waste, saving you extra money. Okay, it's very important that families create a budget. Um, it's probably like when you guys were little and your parents would send you on a field trip and they'd give you money to buy and to get souvenirs at the museum or whatever, and to be able to buy your lunch while you were on that field trip. And then you go on the trip, and then when it comes time for lunch, you reach into your pocket and you suddenly realize that somewhere along the way you have overspent and now you don't have enough money to buy lunch. And honestly, most of us look back or try to think back, where did that money go? And we can't remember all the places that we had spent the money beforehand. A budget helps eliminate that. If you don't have a budget, then what ends up happening is you pay your bills, but then you buy things that are unnecessary or things that weren't planned, and before you know it, at the end of the month, you are running out of money, and you may or may not have covered all your bills. So it is something, budgeting is super, super important. Okay. Fixed cost. When thinking about things that you put in your budget, the easiest thing to start with is putting in your fixed cost. Your fixed costs are things that have the same amount of payment every single month, no matter what you do, such as your mortgage. If you are renting an apartment and it's $700 a month to rent your apartment, it's going to be $700 a month to rent that apartment. You know that immediately, so you put that in your budget. You know automatically that when you're looking at the money that you make, that money is going to be gone on whatever day that it goes out. Also, car payments are another good example of this. If you set up a car payment, I have 3 car payments. My truck is about $319 a month. And I know that it goes out on the 24th of every single month, at least wise for the next 5 years. So every month I know on the 25th, I'm going to go to the bank and look at it, and you're going to see that the day before, $319 went out of my account for that car payment. So those things are really easy to put in. I will just say that the most important things that you need to put on your budgets, of course, are the put in your mortgage, or rent. Most important thing you have as far as finances is a place to live. You don't want to be homeless. You cover your basic essentials, a place to live and food. So if you're running out of money and you're not able to pay bills, what bills are the most important as well should be at the very top of that list. So mortgage would be at the top of my fixed cost list. Um, Credit card payments and car payments, things I can do without, a gym membership, things like that will be at the bottom of the list. So if there's something that's got to get cut, it might be my Gold's Gym membership or Planet Fitness, where they swear they won't judge me, but they do. Uh, that being said, those things might be at the bottom of the list in the places that I might cut if I am not making my budget. Okay, so you need to not only put your fixed cost into your budget, but you need to categorize them by importance. What is truly important? Obviously, a place to live is the most important thing at the top of the list. Okay. Variable cost. Variable costs are things that change from month to month. These things are hard to determine, and they are things that you have to try to budget. But you got to leave yourself wiggle room because they do change. That being said, probably the hardest one for me is my power bill. Depending on the season, depending on how cold it is or how hot it is, whether I'm running heat or air conditioning. I know that right now it's springtime, so thankfully it's staying kind of moderate. So my power bill is actually low right now. Average for the year, if I was to be able to average my power bill out for the year, it'd be about $220 a month. That being said, right now my power bill is running about 140. So it's running about $60 to $80 below normal. That's because I'm neither running air conditioning because it's not really that hot, or if it does get hot, it's only hot for a few hours a day. And it doesn't click on the heat because, well, it only gets cold enough to click on the heat a few hours a day. So instead of having to run the air conditioner all day on a really, really hot day like in the summer, or turning on the heat all day long like you would in the winter, I'm only cutting those things on for a few hours each day. Thus, it is lowering the cost of the power bill drastically. Also, I'm not cooking inside as much. I'm actually grilling, so I'm outside on the grill, making hot dogs and hamburgers for dinner. You don't think about the cost, but every time you cut on the stove or the oven, for every 20-30 minutes, you're probably sending $1 or something away in your power bill. So you have that large amount of money that, if you're not cooking on the stove, you're not using the oven or cooking for long hours on the stove, those things aren't adding up in your power bill. It is really easy for, if you were to cook like a roast or something that took hours, to spend several dollars in electrical bill. The money just goes very quickly, and people don't consider that when they're considering cost of food. So if you take out the electricity by cooking on a fire outside, that also lowers your power bill. But anyway, so this month I'm going to be looking at somewhere, neighborhood of $140, $160 for a power bill. But then say January, when it was really, really cold and we had some snow showers and stuff, I had the heat running all the time. And of course, being Christmas and Thanksgiving and stuff like that during that time of year, I just had finished making Christmas, and that was making a big meal. That's dollars, an electrical bill to make Christmas dinners and things like that. So that stuff adds up. And my power bill in January was like $300, almost double of what it is right now. The same thing this summer. I expect that the month of July, my power bill will probably be $280, maybe $300 because of air conditioning. When it's hot outside, I don't want to be hot. You do not want this much of a man hot. It is uncomfortable to see and uncomfortable to be hot. So, we got the air conditioning running in July, and I'm expecting the power bill to be high. But with that flux, I know that I have to plan for it. And over time, that variable cost is something that I am trying to put into my budget and kind to plan for so that I don't get hit with a shocking bill in January or February. And I don't get hit with a shocking bill in July and August when it's really hot. I plan for those things. I know that that power bill is going to be $100 more than it normally would be in, say, the spring or fall. Um, Food is a huge expense. Me and my wife, we can get away with, about $120 a week for the two of us. Now, when I say food, I'm talking not only the food we eat, but I'm also talking buying dog food, cat food, buying cleaning house supplies, basically, AKA my Walmart trip each week is about $120 a week. When me and my wife are planning our budget, when it's just the two of us, we can get away with less than $500 a month. Um, However, it's not a guarantee. Some months prices go up, some months prices go down. Right now, we're getting ready to go into a meat shortage, so I'm expecting the price of meat to go up. So I may have to adjust my meal plans. I may have to eat some more vegetarian style meals in order to make up for the lack of meat in my diet, because the cost of food will be going up in that area. So you have to adjust. If my daughter and her husband move in or live with us, I know that our power bill goes up. I also know that our water bill goes up, and I also know that our food bill goes up. Um, that just because physically more people in a home calls for more bills. So that's something you have to plan for. If you are wanting to have entertainment in your life, you need to plan for that. You can't just say, I'm going to go to the movies in the middle of the month. If you're living on a budget and you don't have a lot of money, in which, by the way, most people don't have a lot of money, you have to plan for it. So you got to put that in your budget. And you know what? It's very smart to do that. You cannot live from day to day and week to week without some relief, travel or entertainment. About twice a year, me and my wife take off for a weekend and go to Asheville or to Blowing Rock or to someplace in the mountains just to get away for the two of us. Well, that has to be planned for. It's not something we're going to just jump in and do. By the way, those costs are never the same. One time we went, it only cost us a few $100s. Another time we went, it cost us almost $1,000, depending on what we're doing and where we're going. So, you got to plan for those things. And that may require you putting it in your budget for months in order to plan for something like that. Vacations. A lot of people work with vacation budgeting plans where they sign up to go to the beach next year, this time, and they make monthly payments in order to cover the bill for the stay at the beach so that it doesn't come out of their budget all at one time. Other ideas with this would be to save up the money and then purchase those vacations and things. So, you got to put things in there. Now, what's the cool thing about budgeting is that you need to make sure that you designate things, wants and needs. Wants are things you don't need. Wants are things that you can cut, things that can be eliminated, things that can change. Such as right now, I had a vacation trip planned for in July. That vacation plan has now been cut. Why? Well, with COVID-19, everything being closed, but also because of financial reasons, as people aren't working as much or as money may not be guaranteed, I know that we may not be able to plan for that trip. So that variable cost is something that we put in there. It was a want. Now we're cutting that trip and deciding to go with a different trip. We're thinking more along the lines of maybe camping in the mountains, which instead of spending several $1,000s at the beach, we're going to spend maybe 500-600 in the mountains. It's a change. Wants, needs. Needs are things that you have to have. Power bill. Well, unless you want to enjoy the ambiance of candles every night, you're going to want that power bill paid. You also are obviously going to want food. Those are going to be needs. Wants, well, some things may be wants for some people, and other people it may be needs. Right now, because I'm working at home, internet was a want, but it is now a need. So it has changed its category, because without the internet, I would not be able to do these lectures and be able to teach you guys what you need to know. So you need to, just like you did with your fixed cost, where you decided what it is are the most important things that you could or couldn't cut that are balanced every month. You know, you got your mortgage at the top and you got your gym membership at the bottom. Or your satellite bill or your cable bill. TV may be important, but it's not the end of all ends. However, being stuck at home right now, it might be a want before, but it might be a need now, because it crosses into a category that if you didn't have, cable or the internet, you might be going nuts. So, there you are, binge watching for you. But, you got to make sure that you're looking at how those variable costs impact your spending. Also, remember that if you've got a big trip planned, you may need to cut other things or figure out how to save or trim. Maybe it's commuting with a neighbor to work, or maybe it's deciding to eat cheaper meals. Sorry, no steaks this month. Looks like it's going to be Spam and hamburger sandwiches, homemade hamburgers. You got to consider that. Also, eating out and other things like that are variable costs. They don't stay the same from month to month, but they are things that you can change and things that you can cut if you are smart. You just got to think about it. Okay? Banks. There are many decisions when it comes to your money. When it comes to setting up your banking, most of us do not consider the idea of just keeping money around on us. Honestly, to tell you the truth, if I put money in my wallet, it will not be there at the end of the day. I will spend it. And that is a real problem with money. So one of the things that most people want to do to be able to keep their money is to put it in a bank or to invest it. Most likely you'll end up putting your money in a bank. Banks offer a lot of different account options in which way you can use that money. So types of accounts that you can have. Well, of course, cash. If you got cash, you may have a problem. Now, as I said, people that do, putting the money in the old piggy bank, that works great for a kid, but you're not going to want to do that in your own, home or something like that. I will say that probably many of you have family members who are cash people, especially older people, grandparents or great-grandparents that are cash people. That goes back to being raised either during or just after the Great Depression. The Great Depression, what was the Great Depression? A little history moment here. Great Depression was a financial collapse in American society that happened in the 1920s. Banks and fraudulent practices on the stock market caused a financial collapse, which basically turned every dollar that America had into about 25 cents. And the problem with this is that let's say you had a house that cost $1 million and you had $1 million in the bank. Now your $1 million that you had in the bank is only worth 200,000, but you still owe $1 million, and you have no way of paying for that loan in which you had owed $1 million. Suddenly you ended up losing everything that you had. It wasn't that you didn't have some money, but what you did have now is worth a lot less than it used to be. This also caused the collapse of businesses. Since people can't buy things, these businesses closed up their doors, and people became very mistrustful. Also, when this collapse happened, a lot of people, out of fear, went to the bank. It's called a run on a bank, where people run to the bank and they demand that the money that they have in the banking account or in their savings be handed to them in cash. There was a word that went out that basically said that there was a shortage of money. Not only was there a shortage of actual physical money, but there was also a shortage of how much that money was worth. Most everything skyrocketed in price. Things that used to be pennies now were nickels and dimes. So when you have double or triple or even 10 times the cost increase, suddenly your money doesn't go as far. So when people ran to the banks, they went to get their money, and then what ended up happening is most of these banks, because they didn't actually have enough cash on hand to give to their people. Why doesn't a bank have enough cash? I put $1,000 in the bank. Why doesn't the bank have $1,000 to give me? When I put $1,000 into the bank keeps my money and promises to pay me that money anytime I need it. But they're banking on the idea that not every single person that puts their money in the bank is going to ask for their money back at the same time. My thousands of dollars that I put in the bank in savings will be used by someone else to buy a house or to buy a car. And because of that, the bank is able to lend money to people when they want to buy bigger purchases than what they have actually in cash. But when you have everybody run to the bank and say, give me my money, I have $1,000 in the bank, I want my $1,000, hand it to me now, the bank suddenly finds that it doesn't have the actual liquid cash. That means physical amount of money on hand. Half of your money is in your neighbor's home or in your neighbor's car that has been lent to them, and suddenly the banks were caught unaware. Because of this, banks closed, and when they did, people became very mistrustful of banks. A lot of people lost most, if not all, of their money. Because of that, we have a lot of people in society that don't trust banks. The idea of putting your money under the mattress or in a shoebox in the closet, or a lot of people used to take money and put it in a mason jar and seal it up and then go dig a hole in their backyard and hide it in a mason jar in their backyard. That became their banking. My grandmother had what she called Jesus money. What she did is she took some money out of the bank account every single month, and she put $100 bill in the front of each book in the Bible. Well, there's 66 books in a Bible. That means she had $6,600 in her Bible. And that was her emergency fund money. If she wanted to buy something for my grandfather without him knowing about it for Christmas, or if the refrigerator blew up and there wasn't a lot of money in the account at the time, she would go to her Bible and, get some Jesus money. A lot of people hide money in books. My grandmother hid money in books. My grandfather hid money in books. Matter of fact, if you have older people in your family and they pass away and you're having a huge yard sale, you need to take the books and shake them, because you never know. They may have stuck a $100 bill in the front of a book for a rainy day purpose. I've heard of people finding thousands of dollars stuffed in books in a bottom of a drawer. Had an aunt that had a dresser that had a fake drawer. That means at the very bottom of the sock drawer, lifted up, and underneath it was about an inch space, and she kept important documents in the bottom of her sock drawer, underneath her socks, in a special hid compartment underneath the drawer. That was not uncommon after the Great Depression. People didn't trust banks. So putting that money in a box is not a good idea. First and foremost, what happens if your house burns down? Your money's gone. What happens if your house gets robbed? your money's gone? What happens if you pass away and you didn't tell the family members that you had thousands of dollars in a book? That money gets lost. It ends up getting sold to some poor lucky person in a yard sale, and hopefully they look at the book, don't just buy the book, go home, stick it on a shelf, and forget about it. Maybe they get lucky and find your great grandma's money. But just recognize that doing that is not a good idea. Piggy banks are meant to be broken. And anytime that you're trying to do banking on your own, you're really risking it. However, remember, you've got an entire generation of older people who grew up not trusting banks and being fearful of them closing on them. Right now, we're in a financial crunch, and how we come out of COVID-19, this may be something that you see people go back to, fearing to put money in banks, especially if banks aren't able to support themselves. The good news is most banks in America, well, all banks in America, are insured. They're required by law to have insurance. They cover your banking by most of the places you'll go to the bank, you'll drive through the window, look for the little sticker in the window or on the front door that says FDIC. That is the Federal Banking Deposit Insurance. It is required by law that a bank carry deposit insurance, which means every account is guaranteed up to a certain amount. So if you've got $1 million in the bank, you need to look at that bank and see how much of a insurance they're carrying. Usually it's $750,000 or $500,000 worth of insurance. That means for each account, they are guaranteed to cover up to that amount of money, so that if something bad was to happen, you can get back most, if not all, of your money from the bank. So we won't have another Great Depression event where people start putting their money in piggy banks and shoe boxes again. So don't do that. Checking accounts. You know what? We're going to pick up with checking accounts tomorrow. There's a lot of information here on the different types of accounts. But we will talk about checking accounts, debits, and savings accounts tomorrow. All right, guys. Hope you have a good day. Hope this has been interesting to you. And start thinking about your budget. Start thinking about things that are wants and needs. What are wants? What are things that you can live without? That's what the definition of a want is. Something that you can live without. I would like it, but I don't have to have it. And what are needs? Also, what kind of bills do your parents have are fixed, and which ones are variable? And which ones fall into those categories of wants and needs? Because that makes a big difference when thinking about a budget. Where am I putting my wants and needs? What are my fixed bills? What are my variable bills? Where can I cut the fat? How can I plan for it? What things might interfere with those variable costs? As I already told you, the environment, weather temperature can change the cost of your power bill. That makes it a variable cost. However, you're not going to want to go without power, will you? Same thing with food. What happens if there's a mad cow disease and suddenly beef becomes extremely expensive? Or if there's another outbreak of an infectious disease that causes people not to be able to go to work. And if they can't go to work, they can't afford to pay for it. We'll talk about all those things and how that works out tomorrow. All right, guys. Y'all have a great day. Talk to you later.